Good morning to you. It's just after 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 23rd of August. Our top story this morning: children are more likely to be harmed by not returning to school next month than if they catch coronavirus. That's according to the UK's chief medical advisor.
Yeah, Professor Whitty also said it's unlikely that a coronavirus vaccine will be ready by the end of this winter. Millions of pupils in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are due to return to school within weeks. Schools in Scotland have already gone back. Health correspondent Laura Foster reports.
This is how many schools have looked for months. But with the summer holidays nearly over in Wales, Northern Ireland and England, many are busy changing things to keep pupils, staff and the wider community safe. Scientific evidence shows children are unlikely to become severely ill from coronavirus, and some even suggest they spread the virus less than adults.
And of course the floor markings that we've put down to try to...
At this primary school in East London, they're looking forward to having the children back.
I worry about the lack of social interaction that those children have had. I worry about the lack of child development. I look at things like their fine motor skills, the way they would hold a pencil, the way they would form their words, so their speech and language. And some of those children who won't have had those experiences over this time.
Any area that would normally see gathering in groups has been closed. The staff room, the library, the lunch hall. Start times will be staggered to stop parents crowding at the school gates.
Playtime is also going to look very different. In order to keep children within their year group bubbles, here they've marked out different sections of the playground for them using these coloured barriers. That's to stop them mingling. The rest of the playground is going to be used for PE, something that's still very important during these coronavirus times.
The Chief Medical Officer for England says a vaccine is unlikely to be ready before winter next year. So businesses such as shops and restaurants may be forced to close to keep children learning.
We're walking an incredibly narrow path between relaxing enough as individuals and as society that actually transmission takes off, or overdoing it and doing damage socially and economically, which we didn't need to. It's an incredibly narrow path we're walking. There is not very much room for manoeuvre.
It means measures in schools like this one will be in place for several months yet. Laura Foster, BBC News.
So let's speak to our political correspondent Leila Nathu for more on this. Leila, morning to you. We've heard there from England's chief medical officers on that issue of schools. Does that follow the advice from politicians too?
Morning, Ben. Well, I think the government is clearly hoping that this message from Professor Whitty and his colleagues today will help persuade parents and teachers that it is safe to get children back into classrooms. You'll remember a couple of months ago there was a plan to get primary school children in England at least back into classrooms before the summer holidays. That had to be abandoned and the picture ended up being much more patchy. And I think you've been hearing from the Prime Minister in recent weeks that he's talked about a moral duty to get children back into classrooms, the intention that school closures would be the last resort in the event of any local lockdowns. And there is a clear economic benefit too, in addition to the benefits to the children themselves of getting children back into classrooms, that parents would be able to go back to work. So I think this is now an absolute priority for the government. But the Labour leader Keir Starmer is saying, well, look, you've spent the last couple of weeks dealing with the fallout from the exams results chaos when you should have been planning for schools return, accusing the government of putting the school return at risk. And I think it is now turning into a big political test for ministers, given what has happened with the results in recent weeks, to get schools open fully and safely.
Yes. For now, though, Leila, thank you.
Organisers of illegal gatherings in England could be fined up to £10,000 from next week as police...
11 minutes past 7. Good morning to you. You're with Breakfast from BBC News. Let's get more now on our top story. That news that the UK's chief medical advisor has been reassuring parents that it is safe for children to go back to school.
Professor Whitty said missing lessons would do more damage to children in the long term and the risk of them dying from coronavirus is incredibly small.
The chances of children catching COVID and then getting long-term serious problems as a result of it, solely due to going to school, are incredibly small. They're not zero, but they're incredibly small. The chances of many children being damaged by not going to school are incredibly clear, and therefore the balance of risk is very strongly in favour of children actually going to school, because many more are likely to be harmed by not going than harmed by going, even during this pandemic.
Well, how do teachers feel about getting back to work? Do they have any concerns? We can speak now to teacher Helen Carter from Burnage Academy for Boys in Manchester. Good morning, how are you doing?
Good morning, I'm fine, thank you.
I have read the COVID secure return to school plans for both a primary school and a secondary school. I know how complex this whole process is for teachers. What's it been like for you and your colleagues?
It has been a very intense process. We spent the latter end of last term planning a really detailed return programme. We've been working throughout the summer to make sure that everything is in place and that children can return to school safely. We've been working hard with the site team to ensure we have hand sanitizer at every classroom. We now have 5 separate entrances for the 5 separate year groups. School will look very different in September.
Yeah, school. So what's it looking like for you?
Well, our children will be contained in year group bubbles, so children will no longer move around the school during the school day. They will stay in a specific area. For example, our Year 11 pupils will have all of their lessons in the English area, and it will be teachers that move from classroom to classroom. The exception to that rule is when children have PE, because we class PE as very important, and the children will go to the PE area for that. Key Stage 4 students, so that's GCSE students, they will also move to an area for their practical subject. So, for example, if they take design technology, that particular lesson will be delivered in the design technology room. But what the children will see around the school during the day is a vast increase in cleaners who will be on hand to be cleaning down the rooms of these specific areas throughout the day. No, I think the children are very aware of the importance of hand sanitizer because it's become such a routine part of our lives now. I think the children will be aware that that's what they have to do. It will be at every classroom. The government have said that, you know, children are allowed to mix within those year group bubbles, so they will be having different break times to other year groups. They won't be able to mix with their older brothers or sisters if it's a mixed school, or friends in different year groups at break time. So we will be keeping the children apart like that. But in terms of the year group themselves, they will be allowed to mix with each other. Advice is that students will remove those when they get to the school site. However, if that advice changes, we will obviously ensure that students do wear them around the school site. I think to teach in one could be quite difficult because teaching is very active, it's very expressive. Children read a lot from body language and facial expression. And certainly if you have pupils in your class who are hearing impaired, if a teacher's wearing a face mask, that might prove problematic for some students. Those parents who do have concerns, we will work closely with them to ensure they realise that the site is as secure as we can make it. And, you know, children do need to come back to school. It's been a long time and they need to re-engage with their learning. And it's also the issue of their mental health issues. You know, children need to be back in the classroom where teachers are best placed to look after them and help them make the progress they need for their learning.
Helen Carter, good luck with it all. Thank you very much. Deputy Head Teacher at Burnage Academy for Boys in Manchester.
Well, as well as the advice for parents on schools, Professor Chris Whitty also spoke about a vaccine for coronavirus.